Do you know that feeling when there's something that just kind of like feels off? And especially for us neurodivergent people, we feel it in our what we call the procrastination. For those of you listening, I'm putting it into quotes because we are so used to calling it procrastination. But what if it's actually a resistance inside of us that wants to give us a hint on something inside of us? Welcome, my beautiful ones, to Surf Your Energy Wave number 13. I'm so excited. If this is your first time here, my name is May. I am your neurospicy cyber witch here in the Unraveling podcast, where I'm going through a wave of different waves, number of waves, showing you a form of, let's call it philosophy and form of thinking that will help you to get back to self-empowerment for yourself as a neurodivergent and or highly sensitive person, and mostly give you that inner peace and make you feel at home within yourself. Now, we've gone through beautiful waves. Now, if you haven't seen those, please, go back and listen to all of them. They're actually inside the podcast or on my YouTube channel. You can find them with the title Energy Wave and then the number. Or come join my cyber coven, my digital cyber coven, where I'm planning on a couple of things in June. I'm hope that I can get them all ready in time for us to get started in June. A very special membership that is going to be your safe space. But until then, so that you don't miss out, come join, because you're getting all the waves, as emails into your digital, calendar. Into your self, mobiles and emails. But yeah, so before I don't want to, go somewhere else. Just wanted to say that there's a possibility of resources for you. And yeah, if you're ready, let's get started with wave number 13, which is one of my favorite numbers. Why? Because it's the female number. It's the actual number of months that we should be having within 1 year. It's the cycle of any woman out there, right? And I think that's why I'm using this very special topic about resistance today. Look at what are you resisting? Sometimes we resist things. And I know that a lot of the times we prefer to call them, procrastinations or things like that. But what if those things are actually, like I just said, just your system resisting something? Because maybe it's not the right thing for you right now. Maybe it's not the right job for you right now. Maybe there is something that isn't finished yet so that you can do that job. And I'm adding the job part because this is one of the things that I noticed very early on. You know how we are, if we are open, as we've mentioned already, I think, that there is this spiritual guidance that we have, right? And if we are open enough to receive that guidance, to hear that guidance for us, then we get to see that. And I remember when I was working in my 9-to-5 in my corporate world, and I remember that I had colleagues that would come up with tasks that I have to do, like, oh, this has to be done and it has to be done by tomorrow. Or maybe even, the typical one, I want it done yesterday, that one. And so, of course, sometimes I would get the push to do it right away. But sometimes I would have other things come up, like another another colleague asking for something that was way stronger, another colleague somewhere else that was asking for something that was way more important, right? So I would forget and then we'll come back, and then in the evening or maybe the next day, I was like, oh my God, I still have to finish this. I still have to do this, right? So I would do that. And the thing is that a lot of the times when I would finally get the chance to do the job, it was either, someone would come up and say, oh, I don't need it anymore. So, I wouldn't have to do it anymore. Or someone would come up and tell me, oh, no. Yeah, I still want that, but please do it this differently. And so I realized that sometimes that resistance was actually a sign that something's not ready for it yet. And, if you're wondering, because this was something that I was doing when I was still working for someone. ever since I have become self-employed, ever since, I do my own, online, I have a diverse online business because on one hand, I coach and I mentor you beautiful ones. But on the other hand, I also have a very techie, nerdy techie side. So I also do, web design and video editing and stuff like that for other coaches. And the wonderful thing is that the same thing that I just mentioned that I used to have in the corporate world, I have now. Sometimes I have clients come up to me and say, oh, please, I need this and this and this. Of course, I have my to-do list, and sometimes I'll get to them and sometimes I won't. And then there's sometimes it's so incredible because it's like there's this wall in front of me, going like, okay, sometimes I don't even think about it. And then I want to do it. Or, one of my clients comes up and goes like, oh, I hope you haven't done it yet because I need to change this and this and this. So I'm glad I didn't do it because I would have been, I don't want to say sad or angry because it would just be a little bit annoying to, have done something that you then have to, as if you're working double on something, right? So I would just, ignore it and allow myself to have that. So there's two different kinds of resistances for me. That's the fun part, right? That's the right, and if you start acknowledging yourself and, observing yourself, you're going to find out when it's like, okay, so don't worry, don't stress yourself that you weren't doing this. Your system, your spiritual guides, whoever you want to name in your energetic field, were just there, keeping you from it because they knew that it wasn't, the information wasn't finished that you needed for that job. That's one thing. That's one form of resistance. And I call it the fun one because it's like when you notice, it's like, oh man, I'm so glad I didn't start working on it because there was still something, that had to be done. On the other hand, there's this form of resistance that you have when you are doing something that you're not meant to do. When the universe is actually trying to push you towards a more purposeful work, something that lights you up, that you love, but you're not doing it because maybe you're still afraid of something, right? Or something like that. And that is actually the one form of resistance that can turn into depression. That is the reason why a lot of neurospicy people are in a depressed state, because we don't allow ourselves to embrace who we are, but we try to fit in everywhere. We try to change ourselves to fit in instead of embracing who we are, our own waves, our form of being, to then be able to live ourselves, to our full potential. But we don't because we hold ourselves back, and then we have the resistance, and that's what makes us, feel like. And again, here I'm quoting for those of you not seeing it, just listening. I'm quoting this because we feel like we're procrastinating. We feel like we're lazy. But what if it's our system trying to tell us something? Again, please, disclaimer, that's why I'm saying there's different forms of resistances that we can have, that we can feel. And it's about, observing yourself, watching yourself. So was this one of those kind of, that it just didn't feel right getting started with that job because there's still something missing and then suddenly someone shows up? Was it that kind of resistance, or is it more the resistance of, man, I feel like completely what I'm doing right now is completely wrong. I should be doing something completely different, right? And it doesn't mean that, yes, of course, we want to get the strength together to still do our jobs by the end of the day. And I completely understand whether I was, employed or now as a self-employed, coach for so many years, we still want to get our jobs done. So we always find a way somehow. But the more we recognize ourselves, that resistance within ourselves, and see the different nuances on, is this a resistance where the universe is trying to guide me somewhere, maybe to a different place? Is this a resistance because of maybe something that's blocking me inside of me? Maybe am I feeling a resistance towards someone because my head, my mind, my mana'o is what, my Hawaiian teacher used to say, my mana'o, my mind is trying to tell me that, hey, one of the examples was a dear friend of mine. We were friends for almost 20 years. And no, I think over 20 years. We had been friends for, I think, exactly 20 years. And the last year of those 20 years, I felt such a huge resistance, and I didn't understand exactly until I realized it was my mind had been trying to, had been trying to tell me, no, this friendship has been so long, so you should stick together and you should be together. But my system, my own system, was showing me that we didn't vibe at the same wavelength anymore. And, again, my mind was trying to tell me, no, you have to stick to this friendship because, you've been friends so long. But no, because we weren't doing each other any good. I couldn't be a true friend to her. And I think the other way around wasn't possible either. So it was that, right? So it was, looking at observing my own resistance to see, to watch, to see within myself, to become clear. Okay, this resistance is here and it's trying to tell me something. And maybe it's trying to tell me that what my mind, the mana'o, is trying to tell me is not true, is not the right thing. So I'm allowed to change that narrative, and it's going to be all right for all of us. Yes. So that's, a little story from my life on how I saw resistance. And I hope that this inspires you. So please, as always, as I ask always, I'm very curious and I'd love to know, and I reply to all of them. Sometimes I need a day or two, but I always reply. So whenever you have a chance, let me know. Did this feel like, oh, May, you're so right. My procrastination isn't actually is actually a resistance that has been trying to tell me something, or something else. Maybe you've noticed the same like I did, that you resist something and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, this was missing or that was missing. Whether it's that form of resistance or a different one, I'd love to know what the universe or your spirit guides are showing you. And I hope that maybe we'll see each other inside the Cyber Coven at some point. And yeah, I hope you have a beautiful and wonderful week. May she be blessed. May you receive and be open for so many blessings, because it's Gemini time right now, when I'm recording this. So take all the beautiful energy that you have, whatever time of year you're listening and watching this, embrace yourself. And mostly, as always, give yourself grace, because you are an amazing human being and you are perfect, beautiful, and enough.